Hello, everyone. I'm Fabrizio Pandini, and this meeting is Cluster API Office Hour. Before starting, we have a sharing the document with meeting minutes. If you want to get access to the document, you have to join the SIG Cluster Lifecycle meeting list. And just a few rules. If you want to say something, use the raise hand feature of Zoom, and that is below near reactions. If you have some topic to add to the agenda, feel free to add in this document, and let's get started. So here it is. We have first up is Cecile with a note about release 1.1.
Yeah, just a PSA that 0.1 is released. Thanks, Alberto, for doing this. And this is just a first trial of doing a patch release with the new model, which is only bug fixes, so it should not have any behavior changes or features or anything like that. So please adopt it as soon as you can, as it might have some important bug fixes.
Thank you very much, Cecile and Alberto, for cutting this release. And maybe before moving to open proposal, I just pause a second and I give space for people joining this meeting for the first time to introduce themselves. Is there someone that wants to say hello?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Iago.
Hi. So yeah, hi, I'm Iago. I work for Microsoft. I'm in the team that got acquired, the Kinfolk team. And today I'm covering for Tilo, who has been joining these meetings because he's out sick. So yeah, hi everyone. Good to see you.
Nice to meet you. I hope that Tilo gets well soon. Is there someone else? Okay, let's move quickly to open proposal readouts. So open proposal, they are at the top of the document. So spot instances proposal update with Terminator render design. Is there someone that want to say something about this proposal? Okay, moving on, load balancer provider. It is in revival. Maybe Joel or Nadir or David can give some updates how this work is moving on.
Unfortunately, I don't have any updates. I haven't had a lot of time on it.
Okay, thank you. IPAM integration, Jacob is around. Jacob, let me check. Okay, I don't see him. So managing external electricity provider. It's a long time I'm not checking this proposal. Is there any update?
Yeah, no update. Sadly, I have started addressing the comments locally, but I'll push the updates to the PR soon, and I'll request review.
Thank you, Rajari, for the update. Machine pool machines, Matt and David.
Yeah, thanks, Fabrizio. I've made a few small updates and I got a few good comments last week. I'm not quite ready to say it needs review because there's a couple to-dos remaining, but I'm really hoping to clean it up this week because I know next week will be kind of a down week so that we can put it formally in needs review and maybe get it done before everybody bails out for the holidays is my hope. But there have been some changes and I would love any more feedback. But basically I'm addressing comments right now.
Thank you, Matt. Cecile, please go on.
Yeah, just wondering, should this become a PR soon? I know it's been in a doc for a while, but if we're hoping to move forward with the design, it should probably become a PR at some point.
That's the plan. There's just a couple to-dos I think we need to do before we go there.
Okay, cool.
Great. to see this work progress. And then we have a label sync between machine deployment and Kubernetes nodes. If I remember well, is yes, Albert. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Fabrizio. I was having a look at that one today. I shared some feedback there, so I just wanted to encourage everyone to have a look, so we can keep the discussion going, and hopefully we can translate that into a formal proposal during the next few weeks or so.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So it seems that the two proposals that are getting attention and moving towards the line are machine pool machines and label sync between machine deployment. If someone is interested, please take a look, and hopefully both of them will become a PR soon. Okay, going back to the agenda for today, we have a quite light agenda. So first discussion topic is up to Iago.
Yeah, hi. So I'm mainly I mainly wanted to talk about the PR to get Ignition v2 support. Yeah, it's been a while since we've been working on this, and I think there's only one pending or open issue, and we replied with some reasoning, and yeah, I wanted to check if we can get this moving, because it will be really nice to get this merged. Yeah, so there was a concern by Enchebre or Alberto, I think.
Alberto, do you want to comment on this this PR?
Yeah, you mean the concern? You mean the one about the API fields?
Yes, exactly. So I think you were proposing moving some of the fields to a config map, or out of the API. And from what I understand, there was this assumption that on Flatcar, yeah, there's no need for that this doesn't affect the bootstrap of the node, so we can add it somewhere else. But from what Johannes commented there in this thread, it is actually needed. So yeah, we're hoping to keep this additional config.
Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, I'll share my feedback in the comment area, but that makes sense to me. I was hoping that we could get this without impacting the API, but based on that comment, it seems that that's not going to be the case. That's
Okay,
not a blocker from my side. So yeah, I will comment there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think after that we should be good to merge. But yeah, we can write in the PR.
Thank you, Iago. Yeah, it is really getting really hard to review this PR, more than 500 comments and
yes.
a lot of files. So yeah, I hope as well that we can get this merged and move forward. So
Thanks.
Thank you for raising the point. So next up, Stefan.
Yep. Can you open the issue? So I started providing some context. What we're currently doing is we have a bunch of resources where we have reference in them. So for example, if you have a machine deployment or machine set, we have a reference to an, I don't know, Docker machine template or something. We have code in our controllers, or let's say the corresponding controllers to those resources, which automatically upgrades the references. So that means if you have a machine deployment which uses, I don't know, v1 alpha 3 of a provider, and if the controller detects that there is a new API version of that external resource which complies to the same contract, then the reference will be automatically upgraded. To do this, we have to take a look at the CRDs. So essentially, this update reference API contract function gets the CRD and has to go over the labels to find out which versions of the CRD are complying to the same contract. We usually do this with this get key metadata function, which just does a get on partial object meta, which is very efficient. but we have a fallback which does a full list on all CRDs, which needs to watch and caching all CRDs of the whole cluster. We only need a fallback because we handle the case that CRDs are named incorrectly. So usually the first version works as long as your CRD has a name like gbkey.kind in plural and lowercase and a group, which is usually all our resources. So what we're considering is if we should drop the fallback to avoid the case that the CRD cache blows up essentially in the controller. Which leads to the question, can you even do that? And who would be affected, and etc. It's a follow-up of a PR we had recently because KZP was producing log messages because we didn't have the right rights and stuff, but it's not really important for the issue.
Stefan, just for making this clear, so our provider can understand if its CRD are properly named and what will happen if they are not.
So currently you can only look at that as printf here and check if your CRD names match that pattern. I think we could do something like block it in cluster.ctl. So if you want to if cluster.ctl deploys a provider and there's a CRD there which doesn't comply to the pattern, we could return an error if we want, but that's currently not there. So the only way is to do it manually right now. And if your CRD wouldn't comply to that pattern, the reference wouldn't be upgraded automatically. And I think you would get an error on each reconcile, which is essentially means that if your provider is used in machine deployments in KZP, the reconciler wouldn't work anymore. That would be the consequence if we just drop it without any handling at all.
Vince?
Just to clarify, like the controller tools and Cube Builder projects, like they do generate like names like these. So those should not be affected whatsoever. It's if you're literally creating those CRD manually, which I hope you're not doing, because that's a lot of work. But if folks are, like, that's where like it could break if the kind does not match. The alternative here is like to keep the listing, but without caching, which would be like still, you know, really slow because you have to list all the CRDs and incur in like lots of memory usage.
Cecile?
Yeah, I think from the provider's perspective, I don't think this is impacting as long as you're, you know, doing things the right way, which is very likely. Like Vince said, I think you'd really have to go out of your way to not have CRDs named by Cube Builder. But that being said, I think it would be better if we had some sort of automated way to like warn providers if they're not using this naming. But if not, in the meantime, I think we could at least like start with a like adding it to the contract and also maybe opening issues in like the provider repos that we know of to like audit their CRD names. I think it should be a pretty easy manual check to do. Just go to the CRD bases directory and check all the names match. So just like to make sure that we're yeah, like warning providers ahead of time.
So you're, if I got it right, you're proposing to open an issue or do something so the provider can basically self-check if they are compliant.
Yeah, I think ideally we would have something in cluster.ctl or something that would, you know, warn or like fail if the naming isn't right. But if we can't do that, at least we should have some manual check done on the providers. So it doesn't surprise anyone.
Okay. Stefan, do you think that is doable to go down this path? So add a warning cluster.ctl and kind of define a deprecation path for these features. So when this happens, no one should be surprised by this.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't be a big problem to adjust cluster.ctl to emit a warning for release or so. And yeah, and of course, immediately add it to the contract and then drop it or release later or something. Sounds reasonable. And I think for the known providers, I'm not sure if you have to open issues, probably can just take, or whoever does it, can just take a look at the CRDs. It should be pretty easy to just check and then it's fine. And let's at least document it on that issue which providers have been verified.
Okay, there is a question from David in the chat. Would it fit in the test framework?
Good question. I mean, if we introduce a warning in cluster cuddle and some of our tests are using cluster cuddle, depends on. So we could add a warning for cluster cuddle, and we could add a flag that warning is maybe blocking, and then then we can adjust our test that uses that flag. So essentially, our cluster cuddle, essentially the tests which are using cluster cuddle would break if the series don't match. I think something like that should be possible. I have to think about the details a little bit, but
Cecile?
Yeah, I think if anything, it would fit really well in like a conformance test, like a CAPI provider conformance test, which we've talked about several times, but haven't really gone too far with that. But yeah, like a lot of these contract things could be automatically checked. I think this would be one of them.
Okay. Stefan, I think that we have a lot to think about, but
yeah, I'll think about it some more and add a comment.
Yeah.
But it sounds doable overall.
Yeah, it seems to me that there is a general consensus to go down this path because this will remove some legacy code and yeah, avoid some performance issue. But we have to make it easier for the providers. Vince?
I would still like suggest for 1.1 to use an API reader client so that we never cache CRDs whatsoever. Because caching the whole CRD, like, could take like, it's like all CRDs installed in the cluster will be cached, which is a lot of them. And they're usually pretty big as well, like in terms of megabytes of data. So maybe like for the first iteration, like in 1.1, we could potentially like always opt in to use the metadata client first. And then if we have to like fall back, we can use an API reader instead, which goes directly to the API server and spit out lots of warnings and.
Okay, seems I see Stefan +1 this idea. So it seems there is a way forward. Maybe we update the issue, and then when we figure out the detail, we can consider also to send a mail to the mailing list so everyone is informed, and then we move forward with this topic. Is there some additional question with regards to to change how we update API reference contract? Okay, so move on to the next one. Cecile, this is a nice one.
Oh yeah, I was gonna keep this for the end, but just wondering, given that next week is Thanksgiving in the US and a lot of people usually take the whole week off, wondering if we should, give ourselves a break and skip the meeting next week, or I don't know how many people are planning to be here or what people's thoughts are on that.
Opinions? I give mine. I'm generally +1 because even if there is some forks around, basically we cannot decide nothing because half or more people would be around. So I'm +1 for canceling. And eventually if people in Europe want to catch up, do some hacking or some code walkthrough, let's figure it out and we record it. But it will be a kind of getting together if we require, if we think this will help.
Yeah, that sounds great. Maybe we can use the hour for people who are here to like pair on some code or just do like a bit of hacking together.
Yeah,
or
I will
write CAPI and Bash.
Yes, I will be around. If you have any idea, please put it in the chat, and we will figure out if we can organize something for next Wednesdays in alternative to the office hour. Okay, I don't see hand raised, so let's move to the last topic of today's agenda. Yassine.
Yeah, mainly just broadcasting an issue. So I filed an issue to start discussing with the community failure domain support for managed clusters. So please take a look, and if you have ideas or use cases, please add them.
Okay, thank you, Yassine. Is there something specific that we want to surface?
So yeah, I guess there's there are a few things with this work. Like there are two components to it, like the control planes and workers, and I've added some of the available options down there, and like it seems that there's some initial at least agreement on control plane. So yeah, please take a look. We might have missed something. And for workers, that's I think where we need to bring up some of the discussions, especially like regarding like cases where users want like have heterogeneous configurations for their machines. Say like they have GPUs, they have some fancy network cards, but they also want to spread those workloads across AZs. They'd have to create various machine deployments, slice and dice all of the combinations. I don't think that that's like the ideal case. So that's also something that we probably discussed. I linked an like ancient issue that Andy filed a while ago for that one, but we can treat it as an orthogonal, but probably should just keep it in mind.
Please.
Yeah, I was gonna actually call out this issue. I think like we said, we won't probably like we won't like automatically spread machine sets or machine deployments over failure domain. But like we'll definitely like keep the failure domain at or like select one for each machine deployment. So like I guess long-term topology could decide like how to automatically set this field up based on some rules. We don't have to do that today, but it seems like is it just to clarify, like you're suggesting to add, just adding that field so that folks can just manually set it themselves, right?
Yeah, for now the discussion is mainly focused on selecting and setting the field for a specific set of workers, not spreading for a given machine deployment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yassine, for context. Is there some other question related to this point? Okay, we are at the Mike, please go on.
Sorry, I was slow to find the thing there. It sounded like one of the things Yassine was talking about there, maybe Vince was mentioning this, was like a single machine deployment spanning multiple zones. Is that, I mean, not availability zones, but these failure domains, is that something that we're considering? Or I'm just curious from the auto scaling side, like exposing some of that information up through the node groups, might get messy.
So this issue for now is only like scoped to just put in specific machine deployments in failure domains. But for the if we're talking about like spreading a given machine deployment across AZs, that would be probably reopening that issue that is linked and moving the discussion there.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we probably have to be really careful as we approach the idea of like a single machine deployment, like spanning multiple zones or whatever from the outside perspective,
Dean.
So there is I don't know if I want to use the word niche, but there is a use case for when you're using machine pools specifically, because they support multi-AZ auto scaling groups, and there's a whole bunch of caveats tied to that. Like you'll run into problems with EBS, persistent volume storage and things like that. But if your workloads aren't using those and are very agnostic as to what AZ they're scheduled in, then the auto scaling, the multi-AZ auto scaling group works pretty well. But I don't know if that is the use case we're talking about here. And I don't know if there's anything that helps with those other caveats in a multi-AZ auto scaling group. So and I don't know how that problem ties into what's being proposed. But that would be what I'd be curious about hearing.
Mike, I think that you are the right person to answer this question about auto scaling group.
Yeah, I mean, given, Dane, what you're talking about there, I think from the autoscaler side, if we're talking about the cluster API implementation, if we get to the point where we have a machine pool that presents itself as a node group to the autoscaler, and even if that single machine pool spanned multiple zones, the autoscaler wouldn't care at that point because like it's not doing any comparison between the node groups. Now, the topology you're talking about where there are ASGs within that machine pool, that's something, I don't know how we would support that on the autoscaler side if we're using the cluster API provider, because currently there's no notion of like infrastructure provider specific autoscaling technology. So my concern was more about like if we get into a situation where we have a single machine deployment that's somehow spanning multiple zones, and then we have to present information to the autoscaler about like what zone does that node group, comprise, that will get really complicated on that side. That was kind of what I was getting into. But I think from what you're talking about, Dane, like I have a feeling that when we get to the point where we have machine pools surfacing up to the autoscaler, it will still be the same interaction we have now where it's just like, replica changes basically. And then presumably whatever's behind the machine pool will be doing that sophisticated logic, kind of the business logic that you're talking about.
Right. No, I understand that part. My question was more to, I'm sorry, I missed the other person's name, but
Yassine?
Yes, Yassine, thank you. How the failure domain support would play into that. I'm not sure what the use case is and how that maps to the capabilities of the infrastructure at the moment.
So I guess for now, the initial, originally we started exploring this for machine deployments. I didn't start looking at machine pools, but as we're looking into machine pools, we should probably ensure that we satisfy like the, at least at the very minimum, the current use cases that we have today. If you use a machine pool separately without any cluster class or managed clusters.
Okay, I'll dig into the issue a little bit more to better understand the use case, because I think, is this not already possible with three machine deployments?
I can try to give my take at this. So I think that currently the machine deployment only support one failure domain, and as of today we can use machine deployment in cluster class, but there is no way in the current API to basically specify the failure domain, the single failure domain a machine deployment should use. So this is the first problem that we want to use to address, if I got right, Yassine issue, that it is basically a better integration from cluster class and what machine deployment offers today. Then around the topic of failure domain, there are some additional discussion that should be figured out. One is, should the machine deployment support many failure domain? This was discussed in the recent backlog grooming. The idea is probably not, but yeah, it is it is a discussion. Maybe we should open or not if there are arguments. And another side discussion is about failure domain and machine pools, and the integration of machine pools and autoscaler. So all of these are topics that should be addressed, but I think they are kind of orthogonal with respect to Yassin issue, if I'm not wrong. Yassin, do you find my recap somehow meaningful?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everyone. So, okay. So if there are no questions about this issue, or the agenda is completed. So is there any last minute topic that someone wants to bring on the table? It seems not. So have a nice week and see you after Thanksgiving week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Fabrizio.
Yes.
Thanks. Bye.